Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for being here.
If gets too loud, complain, and she'll turn it down. I think it's a little loud now. Yes? It's okay. Okay. So I'm going to read 5 poems. And poems are very personal things. And I like poems that say important things that seem important to me or are emotional and say something about the people who wrote them. So the first 2 poems are by Marge Piercy. She's an American poet. She was born in Detroit to a desperately poor family. And I like her poetry. And so I'm going to read 2 of hers. The first poem is called To Be of Use. The people I love best jump into work head first, without dallying in the shallows, and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, to do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire must be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. I'll pause after each poem a little bit because it's nice to have a little silent time to think about the poem and what it means. So last week, we heard a lot about women's hair because the reading was from Nora Ephron. And yeah, it was good. So here's Marge Piercy on her own hair. This poem is called Hello Up There. Are you or me or it? I go littering you over the furniture and picking you out of the stew. I've often wished you otherwise, sleek, docile, decorative, and inert. Yet even in daydreams, I cannot imagine myself otherwise thatched, coarse, black and abundant, like weeds burst from the slag heaps of abandoned mines. In the 50s, children used to point and shout, witch. Later, they learned to say beatnik, and later yet hippie. But old grandmamas with Thessaloniki or Kiev in their throats thought I must be nice because I looked like a peasant. In college, my mother tried to change my life by bribing me to cut it off and have it done. Afterwards, the hairdresser chased me, waving my hair in a paper bag. The next man who happened was a doctor's son who quoted the Lord Freud in bed and on the pot and beat me when he felt ugly. I grew my hair back just as fast as I could. Cloud of animal vibrations, tangle of hides and dark places. You keep off the tidy and the overly clean and the wango upright. You proclaim the sharp limits of my patience with trying to look like somebody's wet dream. Though I can trim you and throw you out with the coffee grounds, when I'm dead and beginning to smell worse than my shoes, presumably you will continue out of my skull, as if there were inside no brains at all, but only a huge bobbin of black wire unwinding. So the next poem is by E. E. Cummings, and it should really be read in the winter. But it's one of my favorites, so I'm going to read it now, even though it's July. It's called "Oh, Sweet Spontaneous." Oh, sweet spontaneous earth, how often have the doting fingers of prurient philosophers pinched and poked thee? Has the naughty thumb of science prodded thy beauty? How often have religions taken thee upon their scraggy knees, squeezing and buffeting thee that thou mightest conceive gods? But true to the incomparable couch of death, thy rhythmic lover, thou answerest them only with spring. Sorry, sometimes I cry if the poem means a lot to me. So this next poem needs a little introduction and explanation. It's by Yehuda Amichai. So in the year 70, the Romans finally conquered the Jewish state and breached the walls of Jerusalem. And the general in charge of the campaign was named Titus. 10 years later, Titus's brother became Roman emperor. And in honor of Titus, the emperor built a huge arch, which stands next to the Forum near the Colosseum in Rome. Some of you may have seen it. And it's an enormous thing. And under the arch, there are carved reliefs into the stone. And you can see in the relief the Roman soldiers proudly carrying the menorah out of the temple as a booty of war. So that's the background to this poem by Yehuda Amichai. The title of the poem is "I Feel Just Fine in My Pants." If the Romans hadn't boasted about their victory on the Arch of Titus, we wouldn't know the shape of the menorah in the temple. But the shape of the Jews we know, because they begat and begat right up until me. I feel just fine in my pants, in which my victory is hidden. Even though I know I'm going to die, and even though I know the Messiah won't come, I feel just fine. I'm made out of remnants of flesh and blood, scraps of all sorts of Weltanschauung. I'm the generation that's the pot bottom. Sometimes at night when I can't sleep, I hear the hard spoon scratching, scraping at the bottom of the pot. Still, I feel fine in my pants. I feel just fine. So the fifth and last thing is actually not a poem. It's prose, but it feels like a poem to me. So I'm including it. And as you will see, it harks back to the first poem I read, "To Be of Use." So this is a book called Does God Have a Big Toe? Stories about stories in the Bible. And I thought I would start by reading a very nice short introduction, part of the introduction of the author. One of the ways to understand a story is to have somebody explain it to you. They'll probably say, listen to me, this is what the story means, and then they will tell you something. That's one way to understand the Bible, but I don't think it's a very good way. The person who explains the story might be wrong. And in any event, explaining stories from the Bible only makes sense if there's just one right way to understand that story. But the stories in the Bible are so rich and deep and packed with 1,000 different meanings that they cannot be explained just one right way. The best way to understand a story in the Bible is to make up another story about it. And that's what I've done in this book. Such stories are called midrashim in the Jewish community, and I'm going to read you the first midrashim from this book. It's called Partners. Before there was anything, there was God, a few angels, and a huge swirling glob of rocks and water with no place to go. The angels asked God, why don't you clean up this mess? So God collected rocks from the huge swirling glob and put them together in clumps and said, some of these clumps of rocks will be planets, and some will be stars, and some of these rocks will be just rocks. Then God collected water from the huge swirling glob, and he put it together in pools of water and said, some of these pools of water will be oceans, and some will become clouds, and some of this water will be just water. And the angel said, well, God, it's neater now, but is it finished? And God answered, nope. On some of the rocks, God placed growing things and creeping things and things that only God knows what they are. And when God had done all this, the angels asked God, is the world finished now? And God answered, nope. God made a man and a woman from some of the water and dust and said to them, I'm tired now. Please finish up the world for me. Really, it's almost done. But the man and woman said, we can't finish the world alone. You have the plans, and we are too little. You're big enough, God answered them. But I agree to this. If you keep trying to finish the world, I will be your partner. The man and the woman asked, what's a partner? And God answered, a partner is someone you work with on a big thing that neither of you can do alone. If you have a partner, it means you can never give up because your partner is depending on you. On the days you think I'm not doing enough, and on the days I think that you're not doing enough, even on those days, we are still partners and we must not stop trying to finish the world. That's the deal. And they all agreed to the deal. Then the angels asked God, is the world finished yet? God answered, I don't know. Go ask my partners. Thanks for listening.
Do you want to take any questions?
Sure, of course.
Who is the author?
Mark Gellman. He's a rabbi. Yeah, and as Oscar de Mayo did the pictures, as pictures. Oh, does God have a big toe? Oh, and since I have a little time, let me talk about that a little bit. Yes. So there's another midrash later on that's called Does God Have a Big Toe? So it's a little bit long. So instead of reading it, I'm just going to tell you about it. So it's in Egypt, and there's a young girl, and she goes into the kitchen where her mother is cooking dinner, and she says, "Mom, does God have a big toe?" And her mother says, "Don't bother me, I'm cooking." "Go and ask your father, he's out in the fields." So she goes out into the fields and finds her father and says, "Does God have a big toe?" Father says, "Well, I don't know, but I know the science advisor to the Pharaoh. So I'm going to go and ask the science advisor about this." So he asks the science advisor, and the science advisor says he doesn't know, but he'll ask the Pharaoh. And so he asks the Pharaoh. And so Pharaoh listens, and then he puts out a new decree. He decrees that all construction work in Egypt should stop. No more roads, no more apartments, no more bridges, and all the construction workers are to come to him, and he is going to direct them to build a really tall tower. And when the tower is built, he will climb up to the top of the tower where he will be able to see God's foot. And then he'll be able to answer the question whether God has a big toe. So all construction work stops, and all the construction workers are building this enormous tower. And God looks down and is not happy because nothing's being done for the people of Egypt. There are no apartments being built. There are no rivers being contained, and so forth. And so he suddenly makes all the workers and construction workers speak different languages. In the beginning was okay. They could kind of cooperate. But after a while, it got, painful, and it was hard to work because the Germans couldn't speak to the French, and the French couldn't speak to the ones who were speaking Hebrew. And they all started getting mad at each other. And finally, they all decided to take their own group of people who speak like they do and leave. So they all go back to where the people who speak like them live, and they gather up their stuff and they leave. And our original family is leaving. They have a donkey and a cart, and the dad and the mom are sitting in the front, and all their worldly possessions are in the back, and their daughter is lying around in the back, the daughter who started this story. And so they're going out of town to wherever they're going to go. And the daughter says, "Mom, does God have a belly button?" That's the end of the Midrash. Thanks again.
Are there any questions? Anybody want to say anything more?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yep.
Well, that's what the illusion is that it's not a parallel story to that,
Yes.
but who knows?
Well, I want to thank all of you for coming. We had a really, really good turnout today. I know Mike is pleased, got a new star.
No. I just like relating to people.
Well, I think you related very well today.
Thank you.
Mike has more people, he's encouraged more people to come today than we've had before. So any of you who are new to the resident readers, please come back. It's every Wednesday at 4:30 in the afternoon here in the auditorium. And maybe you'd be encouraged to read yourself. memoirs, self-written pieces, fiction, nonfiction, within 30 minutes. And Mike certainly made within that deadline. So please keep that in mind and encourage other people to come. And maybe we'll recruit some more readers. There will not be reading in August, so we'll take up again in September. Thanks for coming. That was delightful.
Good.
Thank you so much. There, we got it.
Voices. Did you shut it off? Because there's no sense taking the batteries.
That's really nice.
Oh, I like it. I'm gonna see if I can get it.
It's actually really
Well,
to read.
Aja is going to come and take care of that.
Delightful. Entertaining and yet pointed.
The only question that I had was, does Donna have a big toe?
It was not answered.
Yes, I
Maybe.
noticed that.
He has a finger and he has a nose and he has a wound, but those I don't know.
God has a back.
He has a back, he has foot, he has wound, he has a nose, he has ears, he has hands left and right.
Does he have a belly button?
Not yet. I mean, we have to wait. for
We
it.
have
No,
to wait.
you have to read the book to see.
We need another Midrash for
I
that.
would think not.
Yeah, so he's not, does he have any other sexual characteristics other than a wound, may I ask?
He's male.
Well,
Wait a
no, if
second.
he has a wound, he's not male.
Yeah,
In the,
Maybe
There's
he's
a cradle.
androgynous.
And he's androgynous, so he's.
yeah,
in the,
and may have both.
Yes.
in the late 8th century, there was something called Shikur Koma, which is supposed to be assessing the sizes, and they tell you the size of every part of God's body, including his penis. How many persong it is, and how many things.
He's a male.
He has
He may have both sets of genitals, you know.
In any case, there's some questions you shouldn't ask.
That's true.
You have no business knowing.
Yes. Or S. Ellen Davis. She is still teaching in the Divinity School. She would be a wonderful reader.
Yes. Her background is fantastic.
Yes, I know.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Saying I